because this draft has been heavily constructed against what Splyce are doing. You've got Sencux in a bad matchup. You've got Trashy on a champion he's not known for. And Wunder on a pick that has typically on competitive play not had the impact from the top lane that all the teams have seen in scrims. So this is an interesting draft setup by Yamato Cannon and the rest of Vitality.
And against his former team, if anybody's going to know the inner workings of the Splyce boys, 2 full splits with him, a tour at the World Championships last year as well.
A bad movie, you know, a bunch of albums, and one of them leaves. Oh, wait. That's something slightly different.
Exactly, one of them did leave. It was Yamato. Now we find out who the true scary Splyce is. Is it the former member or not? Now, okay, 2 things. This pick and ban, great in theory. Nukeduck used to be a great assassin player. Notice the key word there, used to be. Now we need to see him reprise his role as Jeeves and Yamato Cannon shake hands leaving stage. Trashy on Lee Sin. Played it twice in the spring split. Both times were interesting. They were both losses as well.
Yeah, and as we said, it's not the type of champion that he typically is the most successful on. One thing you have to look at though for Splyce is they do have strong setups when ahead in the mid, in the top lane. Syndra and Kennen can become uncontrollable to deal with, and they have good push presence in the mid lane with the likes of a Varus later on into the game. So this could be a very interesting game with 2 different team compositions coming through.
It could, and we'll find out soon enough. It's Splyce taking on Vitality here in week 2 of the summer split. It is of course patch 7.11, which I forgot to mention in picks and bans. Let's see what these guys decide to build, where they decide to go. And let's see what impact Trashy can have in the early game. It's a guy that really kind of built up his brand this year with being a successful mid to late game player. Initiation tool, team fights, definitely scaling into his rank. And now he's on a champion that, while it is useful in the mid to late game, definitely much stronger in the early.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely stronger early. So as we head onto the Rift for this game, I feel like Vitality's composition maybe isn't necessarily the best composed unity of a comp. You, of course, have decent team fighting when it comes to the Kalista ultimate, the Rumble ultimate, these types of things. But you don't look at it and you say, okay, this is exactly what it does. They can control side lanes quite well with this Fizz, with this Rumble, but against Kennen, that doesn't really hold up for too long in the game.
Yeah, and that's something that Splyce will be looking to take advantage of if they can play long enough to get there. I'm looking down the summoner spells, double TPs on the side of Vitality. It's going to help shore up some of those weaknesses. Exhausts for both of our supports. Obviously, Fizz, Kha'Zix jumping in makes a whole lot of sense. And same on the other end, Lee Sin, Kennen. No shenanigans in the early game here, Stress. So, standard laning phase as we play out.
Yeah, Djoko's going to get a little bit of assistance on the Raptors to start things off. And we'll see where Djoko ends up going. We've had a couple of cheese plays out by junglers trying to get into lanes super early. You can do it on picks like Lee Sin. Haven't seen it so much out of Kha'Zix. A lot of junglers have sat back and just farmed their way up past 6 and tried to play a lot more passive style, which would favor Trashy's play style if that's the way they do, in fact, go on this game. You can see Djoko will take red and then continue his jungle path.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on Trashy and Djoko's impact later on. Kobbe, Mikyx going up against Steelback and Vander. The race for level 2 here. But as you mentioned in picks and bans, Braum pretty good into Thresh. Has some tools to deal with him, and as it stands, Steelback pretty hard pushing that lane.
Yeah, Steelback is going to be able to help them get level 2 just a fraction of a second earlier, but you can see that Varus Thresh is very good at evening it up themselves. Was watching Djoko on the map to see whether he was going to go into the Splyce jungle, but hitting level 3 off that wrist scuttle means Sencux has to be careful. He's fell to a gank like this last week on Lucian.
He's going to do it again. Djoko was involved in every first blood last week. Not going to pick it up yet. The Raptors are coming to help. First blood, Nukeduck. Now Trashy's running away with his life. 200 hit points going low. Djoko finds first blood in nearly every single game he plays.
And this is almost the same that happened last week for Vitality and for Splyce. Djoko just going very aggressive early game, however, hook onto Vander.
Vander gets caught by the Flay, taking a lot of damage. Pierce from Steelback doesn't find his target, and the lane continues to reset.
So Sencux last week pushed up in game 2 on Lucian, a little bit later on into the game, but easily got ganked and was taken down by Jankos. This time around, it's Djoko comes in from the backside of the lane, is able to take him down for this first blood. And you can see Sencux trying to play the bully phase of this lane. Before level 4, generally you can push a Fizz quite heavily in, but look, Sencux wasn't respecting the damage that's going to come from Kha'Zix, from Fizz, and in goes the first blood onto Nukeduck's Fizz. This is a great start.
It is a phenomenal start, and not the first time for Djoko. He gets himself yet another first blood, contrasting that to Trashy. 20 first bloods for Djoko out of his team's 21 this year, and they've played 32 games. That's 60%. 60% of his games he picks up first blood, and for a guy who really sort of struggles elsewhere in the game, it is up to Vitality to use these advantages a lot more clearly, because the crown, First Blood King, it hasn't been Jankos for a long time.
Yeah, it feels like that title may very well get passed over in the H2K Vitality series that we will inevitably end up seeing a couple of times this split. And, you know, that's a testament to Djoko's growth as a player, because he came in, first of all, as a sub on the Unicorns, then the first few weeks of Vitality last split, playing Rengar, steps on a Caitlyn trap, dies under tower, and you're like, what is this guy doing? What is going on? Unfortunately for him, it wasn't the best start, but he has improved leaps and bounds when it looks at these early game phases for Vitality. The problem is they just need to kind of have that success later past the 15-minute mark, and that's the growth that I'm expecting a guy like Yamato Cannon to be able to bring to a team, because he did it with Splyce.
Well, it's an interesting question, right? Because with Splyce, you had these unmolded, untested, youthful players that learned and could grow under Yamato, who had a significant amount more stage experience than the Splyce boys when they joined. On the other hand, you've now got a group of players under Vitality with a lot of experience, and that old adage, can you teach an old dog new tricks?
Is it the equivalent of like grumpy old men at that point?
I mean, it depends if they win or not, because if they don't win, I've seen Vander be a little bit grumpy from time to time, if anyone follows his Twitter exploits.
Yeah, and after the Schalke series that they didn't perform in. And I think that's a real big thing that'll stick out for Vander, is he wants this team to do so well, because the last team he was on did not live up to the hype.
He never left LCS. I read that message from Vander.
Yeah, I don't know how much you can claim that one for.
Well, listen, what is a good sign for Vitality? Last week, even though they lost 2-0, hold that thought as Kobbe's stepping a little far forward. Miky's got the lantern at the ready, though. He's going to pull Kobbe out. Those Vitality early game objectives. 2 out of 2 first bloods. They got first dragon, a bunch. First tower as well. They picked up the Rift Heralds. They didn't use them particularly well, but that can come with practice. I'm expecting that to develop. So Vitality early game, theoretically should be stronger than Splyce.
Yeah, and you look at how they were playing last week. Vitality looked very, very strong. As you said, got all of these objectives early and then kind of faltered when it came to that Rift Herald play. The analyst test talked about it to begin the day. Vander getting caught out made it very difficult for them to make a play. And you can see once again Vitality wanting to make plays, but things holding them back, like a ward in the bush, means that Splyce have the easy read on this. Playing up against Kalista, Braum that are level 5, there's no threat here. That's not really going to go in the favor of Vitality, so Splyce can play it out very carefully. Trashy comes down to the bottom lane.
He's farmed till 6.
Yeah, he's there. Level 6 is here. Trashy has been given the easy early game on Lee Sin, or he didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, luckily in that case, Djoko's early game still had the impact. He got that first blood. CS numbers are pretty even across the board, so nothing too exciting to speak of. Both door and shield lanes for AD carries here, so a lot of sustain and playing it safe. So it's really going to be up to earning those plays and unforced errors if Thresh hook goes wide, if Braum can find the right engage.
But that's where you then look at it with a pick like Lee Sin. If you have done nothing by the time you hit level 6, is that good enough? Is that enough out of a player that the enemy jungle gets involvement in First Blood and on Lee Sin, a pick that typically gets into lanes very effectively early on and can create kill pressure with something like a Syndra or a Kennen, depending on the matchup? You 0-0-0. Maybe it's a bit damning to go that far, but...
I agree. I think it's one of those things where it's like, hey, it's kind of a harsh question, but when a champion like Graves was available and open, and if you were going to go for a farming style, I think it's a fair question, right?
Yeah.
But now if Trashy pulls off the Godfist Lee Sin play, finds a kick onto Steelback or Cabo, then obviously, you know, we're silenced where we stand. So we just have to judge the play. Trashy has the potential to dive this Rumble. A lot of CC from Kennen, but he's not going for it yet.
Yeah, it just reveals himself on the ward there as well by killing it. So Cabochard knows that Trashy was around, but exiting. You can see there's a little bit of a trade between Trashy and Djoko.
Yeah, of course, on the picture-in-picture, you can actually see Wunder's family. Have a shout out to, hello, come to the studio, thank you so much. I actually have Wunder on my fantasy team. He said, thank you for believing in me. I do believe in you. Get me those fantasy points. Totally unbiased caster.
That's how this series is going to be.
Yeah, I beat Vedius last week because he's a fantasy noob. So that's not really fair.
Yeah.
And these are the plays we were talking about. Trading ultimates.
Yep, good block from Kobbe. Just is able to very easily catch Steelback. Nobody burns a flash, nobody burns anything on that exchange, so it's one ult for one ult. And I want to maybe talk a little bit about the reason that Trashy might pick that Lee Sin. Graves offers almost no crowd control, and you look at this lineup, you've got Kennen, who's great once a fight has started, a little bit of pick from Syndra, a little bit from Thresh, some from Varus, but without somebody that can put themselves right out there in front of the team and actually get a fight started, they may have run into issues trying to catch a Kalista or a Fizz or these big damage picks that can actually punish you very heavily.
Yeah, and then we see Vander get caught by the Sonic Wave, but Trashy does not follow the Lee syndrome. Keep an eye on your minimap. Splyce have backed away. Maybe they don't anticipate Vitality risking it for a red buff, or more likely just going to concede. It is a red buff, it's not worth a big team fight.
Yeah, at this point you can see they pushed out bottom lane, they're going to try and push out mid lane safely to start this. Red buff goes over to Vitality, but that's Splyce not committing into an area where they didn't have full vision control, that they didn't realistically have an advantageous fight. So that's a little bit of temperament from them. Rather than just chasing after a red buff, they know it's not necessarily worth it at this point in the game.
No, it's not. 10 minutes in, even on gold, despite giving up first blood. Wunder's got plus 10 in the top, plus 15 for Trashy in the jungle.
And
plus,
bot lane is going
plus
well.
nearly 20, 15 rather for Kobbe. So a slow start to this game, somewhat expected. And now we're going to move into this mid game where Djoko and Trashy could have some more options.
Watch for a TP bot lane. Hang on, look at where that ward is placed. Even though they know Djoko's here, they can't react quite in time.
Glacial Fissure comes down, Lantern to safety, Kobbe and Mikyx make it out, and they get the TP.
Clean. Looked like they weren't going to be able to react in time, but as soon as that Lantern comes through, Cabo actually stops his teleport from completing, and it means that Cabochard's now stuck under tower in the top lane with a Kennen pushing right the way up against the tower. Now Trashy takes Rift Herald as well. This is a pretty early Rift Herald, but we've seen them around this time, 11 to 12 minutes, and generally they don't have the highest utilization, but Kobbe manages to get out of bottom lane.
Sencux comes down, Fate's Call is blocked, Kobbe's flash was needed. Summoner spell secured, so this is the advantage to Vitality at the cost of a Rift Herald. A dive was slowly being set up, but Kobbe and Mikyx are now very juicy targets. Teleport for Nukeduck is available, no flashes for the bottom lane of Splyce.
And now they can just send Trashy up to the top side, maybe get that Rift Herald into top tower and secure the first tower of the game. Generally, it's going to be 100% success rate if there's nobody to defend the tower behind it. But look at what Vitality are looking for in the mid lane here as well. Splyce reacting, sending their bot lane up towards mid to try and create a second lane of pressure here. Try and deny Vitality's response of pushing out any other lane.
And tower first blood, secured by Splyce. That's going to give them a small gold advantage. Look at the minimap. No support yet for Vitality. And while Cabochard is going to be able to defend, this inner turret will take a lot of damage.
Yeah, and they're pushing mid lane at the same time. So Splyce trying to hit 2 points on the map. Top tower should not fall here with Rumble being able to push up. Rift Herald will end up dying. But look, Splyce are trying to control mid lane and top lane at the same time.
It's just exactly where these teams have consistently performed. Vitality's opening few minutes, pretty good. Steelback will take a couple of autos, but the end cost is 2 towers for 1 and 80% HP on the inner turret. Like, Splyce are going to be ecstatic with that trade of objectives.
And keep in mind, this is the type of lane that Wunder can take over with. This Kennen will be a lane bully.
Remember to eat your vegetables, ladies and gentlemen. Just recording an award. The debris falls on top of Kobbe's corpse.
That feels bad. Kobbe maybe a little bit of a reckless place to recall out there, but I mean, Nukeduck now at 2-0, that actually does create a significant problem because at some point, Wunder and Nukeduck are going to come 1 versus 1 against each other, and I want to watch that trade happen because not often you see Kennen and Fizz go up against each other, potentially in a long lane. That'll be an interesting one when the Fizz is already 2-0 to track how that one works. But at this point, you can see Vitality after pushing bottom lane in response. Now they take Steelback to the mid lane, and they'll just hold him here for as long as they need to. I wonder whether they'll send him out to the side lane like Fnatic do with Reckless every now and again and bring him back into the middle lane, but that remains to be seen as this game goes on. Yeah,
a lot of options, a lot of lanes to focus. The Dragon hasn't been started until this very second. 14 minutes in for a Mountain Drake, and it's in full vision of Splyce. It feels like every time a play happens, both teams are going to be fully aware of it. Trashy could go for a hero play. Gonna land the Sonic Wave if he decides to fire it. Stood on top of a ward, 1300 HP. Djoko's gonna cancel this one out. Piercing Arrow goes down, and Djoko easily picks up that Mountain Drake. Vitality continue their string of strong early game objectives.
Yeah, well composed, able to know that, you know, Trashy can't follow up over the pit if they end up withdrawing back. You just saw Sencux have his Banshee's Veil popped as this fight is about to start.
And end! Fate's call.
That's one of the strengths of the Banshee's Veil, though. We're seeing it, people build it quite commonly, even as a first item. It's more akin to the old Abyssal Scepter, but with the Banshee's shield still on it. Now, against this composition, Kalista, Braum, where else is the crowd control coming from? Maybe a Fizz fish, but if you got a Banshee's, the first thing that hits...
Stress.
Okay.
Vitality and Yamato are subscribing to the strongest form of crowd control.
Okay.
Death. They have a Rumble, a Kha'Zix, and a Fizz.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true, but I don't think Splyce is just going to stand and wait for the train, or I guess the fish at this point, to come towards him. So Banshees does give them a little bit of an advantage when it comes to the actual catching of fights. Trashy doesn't have one.
Can Nukeduck catch Trashy? All right, Shum the Waters goes out, almost full range. Hikathien, no, that's the wrong one. Urchin Strike goes out, Playful Trickster.
That would be a very different ult if Hikathien surprise started running away. I guess you've got Pugmore, so anything can happen.
Well, Nukeduck not fared enough yet to 100-0 Trashy, but at least got his flash once again. And it's just a slower paced game. I mean, Vitality, despite being down a tower, they're even on gold. You can see the differences. Only really in the top lane were significant differences. 400 gold bonus here for Steelback versus 1,000 gold up top in favor of Wunder. Yeah,
of course, that tower going down in the top side as well gives Splyce a little bit of that extra gold coming through. So for Splyce, this is a good situation for them to be in, but it's very reminiscent of the situation they were in against H2K, where you have a slight lead, but you don't necessarily have advantages on the map. And as we head towards the bottom lane, they've hooked in Djoko.
They have indeed. His leap got interrupted as well. Djoko kicked away, and Trashy gets the kill.
Clinical as they go over the ward. Djoko just gets caught out, forced to jump, forced to flash, interrupted just about everything. And Splyce with the composition, with a Thresh, with a Syndra, we said that they're going to have to rely a little bit on picks when it comes to getting fights started. Well, that one works out perfectly for their first of the game. Last week, when we hit this stage of the game, Vitality made some misplays that the Unicorns punished very severely. Some lack of synergy in terms of calls, being caught out a little bit. This is on the side of Vitality. Let's see if they've been able to adjust and adapt from that series last week, and also if Splyce can punish those mistakes as and when they appear. Yeah, those mistakes were based on walking over warded areas. You mean like Vander getting, unsurprisingly, hooked in last week, and this time it's Djoko getting hooked. Easy kill for Splyce. 3 versus 2. Nukeduck didn't even bother to get involved in the fight because at that point, Djoko's already dead. Yeah. As simple as that. Yeah, it really is. Djoko walks over a ward, tries to do Braum, gets hooked, dies. Okay, let's go. Let's get back into the game from that for Djoko, I guess. One of the narratives we had yesterday was discussing good and bad Baron setups. And now we're getting to a point where that will be a talking point, nearing 20 minutes, and knowing both of these teams, their penchant for the late game. For better or worse. But no traditional tank, really, on either side. So significantly more risky. And
And I want to see how they set it up. That's what we're looking for when we get to that point.
So this isn't necessarily a Baron setup point, but if you look at the vision that Vitality have specifically, while Djoko died, they actually achieved a row of pink wards and a row of trinket wards to set out throughout the Splyce jungle. So they will see the next set of players coming as Splyce sweep out the vision on the river. But, you know, it was a good setup to deny Splyce any further aggression from that. So I like that Vitality is still maintaining some sense of vision control despite the pick.
Yeah, and of course, talking about that vision, observers highlighted just how many wards Splyce have had down all game long, it feels like. Really, really impressive. We'll keep our eyes on those control wards as there's not a lot in the inventory with Dragon coming up in a minute and a half. 2 items completed for Wunder. Wit's End, Blood of the Rune King. Zeal item being worked towards for Kobbe. On the other side, same is true for Steelback. And both teams making it clear they're interested in this Dragon.
Now, the funny thing here is I think Splyce can actually take some liberties around not necessarily starting this Dragon themselves, because you're also looking to try and get the teleport from Cabochard at the same time, because Wunder can push that tower very quickly, and as long as the fight isn't already in process, then join the fight after pushing up. And from that point, Splyce may be able to get 2 sets of objectives if they play it carefully.
Yeah, they pushed out the bottom lane, pushed out the middle lane. Remember all the damage Rift Herald did to that inner turret top.
Yeah.
At me, he's Wunder. They don't even need to force the teleports. Very reminiscent of just good mid-game macro play here for Splyce.
And now they'll do the opposite on the bottom side. Hook lands onto a minion, so it's not actually going to do anything much here with a Thresh and a Fizz. I don't necessarily think a pick would happen in mid lane. But Wunder's next objective is move down to the bottom side, maybe do the same there, try and draw Cabochard into one of these towers bot lane, and push it back, try and get another objective after this Dragon has gone, because then you're making presence around that Baron, and you were talking about Dragon setups being so very important.
And really difficult. That pink ward just to the right of your screen does not actually spot the Splyce invisible ward. So Splyce with a little bit of information as their ward is hidden around the corner. Good Lantern comes up from Mikyx, but he's caught by Chumba Waters. Puts down the box, flashes defensively. Djoko gets the power unleashed. Here comes Trashy. He's taking him down.
Here's Wunder.
Second of the kill. Wunder's running for his life. That teleport's definitely a zoning one. Chain of corruption starting to spread as Cabo gets taken down. Mikyx finally falls prey. And Wunder just takes Vitality on a ring around the rosy.
Yeah, Wunder drew 3 members of Vitality back away from the fight as Cabochard actually TP'd in. So at first he looked to go aggressive, maybe looking to flash in with the ultimate, but recognized he would be on his own. The rest of Splyce weren't quite ready to fight themselves, but at the same time, that's 2 kills, plus the Infernal Drake going down in exchange for Mikyx's life.
Yeah, and a lot of damage being put onto Steelback from a combo from Sencux. He's starting to scale up, but crucially, Splyce get the Dragon. Here's a replay.
Yeah, so Splyce are able to save Sencux utilizing the Thresh Lantern there, and you can see Mikyx trying to create this pick. Actually eats the Fizz ult when he didn't necessarily have to, but from here, TP is so far back in the lane that Splyce is still just about under their tower when it completes. Wunder could cut down, but he would risk getting hit by the Kalista ultimate. Then Cabochard's in the fight as well, trying to kill the rest of Splyce, but Wunder's done enough holding Vitality back. The Cabo can't do anything 1 versus 3, and everything ends up in Splyce's favor.
It does, but not the fantasy points.
Is that all you care about in this game?
Not all,
okay,
but I'm heavily interested in it. It's definitely something that I will be annoying you with throughout the course of the series, Stress. So
people don't know how much you talk about this during the week either. So when we get to this point, people go like, stop acting annoyed. Stop acting like he only talks about it now.
No, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Especially when you win. You get to gloat for 7 full days. It's fantastic. Well, take a look at the items again as Splyce extend their gold lead to a very sneaky 4,000.
Speaking of sneaky.
Sneaky. Nukeduck.
This is the 1v1 we were talking about.
Thing is, 2,100 hit points, no flash. It is Hourglass Protobelt. I don't know if Nukeduck got the damage.
I don't know, especially because in a sustained fight, Wunder, he's got the Wit's End, got that magic resistance, he's got the Blade of the Ruined King as well. Like, no, Nukeduck didn't want the fight.
We're never going to see it. Well, that's not fair. We might see it. We're just not seeing it now. Let's see what Nukeduck can do. He's still got the teleport available. Wunder does not. And notice how all of a sudden the Splyce group is a little more defensive. Wunder can't be pushing as heavily, and he's making his way to the rest of the core team.
Nukeduck was rumbled, was able to spot him out there on that Scryer's Bloom. So with Wunder basically controlling the side lane, it is kind of difficult for Vitality to do too much more. But if they can bring Djoko here, oh, flash into the Fish.
Fish connects, Chum the Waters is going to put a lot of damage in a 2v1. Wunder's in trouble, running for his life. Kill secured, Nukeduck.
And now you look at the map and you say, okay, what was Splyce doing at this time? Now they head towards Baron, but Wunder's already dead. They've lost control of that side lane. Now Nukeduck with TP takes control of bottom lane, pushes it out up towards the tower, and can cut in behind Splyce if he chooses to.
And so crucial. That was the flash that Wunder used to win the previous team fight. The window of opportunity still in favor of Vitality. Good kick flash from Trashy. Death sentence finds Cabo. And Kobbe is on the board with another.
Okay, there's the reaction from Splyce. They've got full vision control on the top side of the map now. Cabo is on the respawn for 35 seconds now, and at this point, Splyce can look to double down on that vision control, push out the top lane, recall back and get there. But look, Nukeduck takes an uncontested tower in the bottom lane because nobody could react in time. It's individual plays that almost have no connection between each other and very little consequence in favor of Splyce now because Vitality just somewhat closed some of the gap here. This is nice out of Trashy being able to go aggressive. You see the mechanics come through, all those Lee Sin games that we've been boasting about Trashy playing.
Boasting's the word. I don't think it's the one we used though. But yeah, good mid-game play here from Trashy. 2-0-2. Those were the plays that we needed to see because you couldn't have done that on a Graves.
Yeah.
Well done. There's a play-by-play line if ever I've heard one. But important to see them happen because it is a little bit of a meme. Trashy and Lee Sin. Miky's going to be the target of Fate's call. Sencux continues to play on the flank. Gigantic bunny rabbit. Not going to find anyone to eat just yet. Defensive flash from Vander. Wunder connects as well. That's a great equalizer from Cabochard. Vitality's re-engage is starting to sting. A kill onto Wunder. Steelback loses his life in trade though. Sencux going low. The Lantern pulls him to safety, but Nukeduck gets the shutdown. Djoko's looking for another. And Yamato is celebrating. Fight victorious for Vitality.
Yeah, Vitality with a good counter engage because Splyce were trying to come into that fight from one side. Wunder had to flash forward to try and even just get one stun in that fight. And from there, Splyce continued to try and chase. Mikyx was a lot more concerned with Trashy and Sencux's safety than Kobbe's because Kobbe was desperately trying to chase down Steelback for the duration of the second half of the fight. And for now, Splyce recognized that Vitality haven't started the Baron yet, and they don't rush towards what was inevitably a trap.
Yeah, look at the ring of vision around the Baron pit. Splyce haven't stepped too far forward yet. Banshee's Veil gets popped. Nukeduck finds Chum the Waters. Scatter the weak buys a few seconds of time. Sencux goes down. Djoko on the board.
They'd bought enough time that Splyce thought, okay, maybe now they are doing Baron. Maybe they were waiting and started because there was no vision on the Baron pit. Splyce getting a little bit antsy and Sencux drifts way too close to the pit, gets taken down. It's got a bit messy over the last couple of minutes. These open fights on the map where nobody really has the full advantage. Djoko, avoids Trashy.
Yeah, Trashy didn't find the kick or the angle. Wunder's running for his life. Equalizer's already been used and Nukeduck completes a teleport. Wunder's locked down in a river. Nukeduck gets caught by the chain of corruption, goes golden. The bunny ears looking for more. And Nukeduck is able to dissuade Splyce's re-engage. They've got a 5-on-3 at best because Sencux is only just respawning.
And this is one of the difficulties that we have seen for weeks. Even in the spring split when people were playing Kennen from the top lane as this AD style, it's difficult to have impact in fights with Wunder where TPing in, not quite matching the right angle to get into a fight safely and taken down. This time it wasn't even a TP that brought him into this. He just runs into this, trying to save Trashy. Wunder's left on his own. Nobody can really buy enough time to get him out of this fight, so he tries to stand his ground, tries desperately to take out Vander, but 4 versus 1 isn't fair, and this Kennen suddenly has no impact anymore.
And just like that, a 4,000 gold lead swings. Splyce are now down 1,000 gold, roughly. and Baron buff on Vitality. They only had 2 towers secured before this. And with Baron, I'm sure they can set up more. Jeeves, the man on your screen there, a little bit shocked and stunned as Splyce have been pulled apart by the team comp that was drafted by Yamato. We talked about the uniqueness of this, maybe lacking synergy in places, but it doesn't matter when executed punishing Splyce.
But Wunder has been neutralized. Trashy is on a champion that he looks more neutral on. Sencux has been neutralized through the laning phase as well. Opposite of 4-0 Fizz in this game now makes it almost impossible to kill. Kobbe is the only threat left on Splyce that Vitality have to play around, and in fights, he's been an easy target.
Stress, we're nearly 30 minutes in, and Sencux still does not have a kill. Do you think he could end this game with 0 kills?
I mean, he's on a Syndra, so if you end 0 kills, but look at it, he's got Banshees, Morellos. This isn't massive amounts of AP at this point of the game.
Sencux, will you find it? We have a great story to tell if we get the time. Sencux is running away as Vitality with Baron are being held at arm's reach in the mid lane. They've got a Baron-empowered minion, but Kobbe's going to try to clear it out, and we'll try to get back to the stat story later. Keep looking for Sencux. Will he kill anybody? Don't know yet.
I want to look away from that story for a moment. That has some legs later on. I want to look at what Steelback has in his inventory. Steelback used to be on Fnatic. He's feeling the vibes in the air. He's getting one of these, you know, micro-heavy 80 carries that likes to duel around fights. And he's going towards the Frozen Mallet, Trevor.
Hey, if it works for Reckless, why can it not work for someone else? Vitality have taken 2 more towers. Steelback starting to get beefier and tankier. And work in his favor, and they're not done yet. A minute left on Baron, Stress, and they're running Splyce in circles. Yeah,
look at it. I mean, nobody can duel Nukeduck on his own. Now that you put Cabochard alongside him, that pushing power it's escalated. With no teleport on Nukeduck, though, they do have to be careful that Splyce don't start a fight when only Cabochard can join. But looking at the disparity that they're in, that's actually a tricky thing for Splyce to implement. That would require that flank from Wunder that we've been talking about is so difficult to actually implement on this style of champion.
All right, story time.
Okay.
There are 50 starters in the EU LCS, 10 teams, 5 main players per team, right? If you look at all the starters who played 10 or more games this year in the 2017 season, there are only 3 players that have secured a kill in every single game they've played. One of them is VIT G1.
Okay.
One of them's Febivin. One of them's Sencux.
Wait, what? Where's, like, Perks? And
yep, he's had a game with no kills.
Sven?
Game with no kills.
Reckless?
Game with no kills.
Oh.
Remember, Reckless plays side lanes with some help at times. He doesn't need to get kills. So if Sencux does not get a kill this game, he's scratched from that list, and then there will be only 2. And then we'll set ourselves up for a Highlander matchup when UOL play HDK.
On Sunday.
Oh,
Sunday.
Look at this. See, I told you our story was going to be good. The audience is a little confused and lost. I'll write it down. You guys can keep up a little later. Death Sentence connects onto Djoko, but nobody gets killed yet. And Vitality, lacking some vision. I'd like to see some more wards. There's the Dragon coming up in a few minutes. And then when they have those wards, Stress, they can look to kill Splyce.
Yeah, they can look to deny Sencux any kills. You know, 2 hours ago, Trevor was given that stat by our stats team, and his first thoughts were, that is a rubbish stat. I'm never using that.
You're a liar. I loved every second of it.
Well, I know what I heard from that. Trevor was like, it's rubbish, never doing it. 2 minutes later, you're like, give it to me. I want a graphic, I want to tell the story.
There is a part of the job that entails acting. And I did not need to act for that stat. Nukeduck forgot what a Banshee's Veil does, and his Chum the Waters finds nobody. Chain of Corruption is starting to spread, and no one's killed yet. Sencux scatters the weak, and Vander and Steelback knocked back for a moment or 2. Exhaust goes down into Steelback, and the Glacial Fissure sentences Mikyx to death. Sencux goes down, that's a double kill for Steelback. It's a turnaround though. Splyce have got more. They've got another onto Cabochard. Djoko, run for your life. Wunder stuns him up with the electricity. Trashy ward hops forward. Nukeduck needs to urchin strike through a minion. Playful Trickster will be available very, very soon, but he can't stand toe-to-toe with 2 members of Splyce. How did Splyce win that fight?
Well, Splyce had a good counter engage. The fish is already back up. Remember, that started this fight out, and Ooh, Vitality managed to get away with only Nukeduck remaining in that fight. So Nukeduck opens up with the fish, as he said, onto Banshee's Veil. Sencux doesn't really get too much from this, and watch where Wunder comes from. That's what I want to look for. It's what we've been tracking this entire game. So Sencux split up from the fight. Wunder over on the side is able to force the Zhonya's from Nukeduck, and now Steelback, exhausted on the left side of your screen, gets taken out, and he's one of the big team fighting proponents. Trashy was able to get a kickoff that delayed the save on Steelback, and it was enough to end the fight in favor of Splyce. And at the end of it all, Nukeduck's score reads 4-0-4. Sencux kills not found.
Only three players have got a kill in every single game. Sencux may be on the verge of being removed from that list. Vitality still maintain the gold lead, but as it appears, these team fights doesn't really matter. Splyce have had their first big victory in a little while, and stress. Baron's up in 20 seconds. Mountain Dragon is alive. That's what both of these teams are sort of posturing around. But there's not enough vision, not enough wards. Trashy tries to ward Hub out. Scatter the weak, locks down Vander for a few seconds. Fate's Call can be used if needed, but Steelback holds onto the cooldown.
And you look at the number of threats that Vitality have in comparison to Splyce, you see that Steelback is heavily up, 2,000 gold up against Kobbe. He's just so strong in these fights that if he stays alive, Steelback should be able to carry this game through. The same can be said for Nukeduck, but Steelback died, Nukeduck ended up 2 versus 1, and again, Splyce are trying to fight.
Steelback is under a lot of threat. He's stunned, he's locked down. The frozen mallet's keeping him up. Lifesteal for a few more seconds. Steelback finally goes down. Sencux gets his kill. Now Splyce look to take down the rest of Vitality. Kobbe gets onto Djoko, finds a double onto Nukeduck, finds a triple onto Vander.
That fight couldn't have gone much better for Splyce, and from being behind, they find the target on Steelback's back, and they're able to take him down quickly as the first kill of the fight, and then they just continue to move through the rest of it, and for some reason Vitality just weren't defending their AD carry.
And so, crucially, it was Sencux that got the kill. It makes our story so worthwhile. Gonna take down Cabochard, that's the ace.
And that's the end of the game.
There's no one to defend. Vitality put up a fight, but Splyce knocked them out.
Execution on the team fight from ahead was what cost Vitality. Steelback got caught out. This was a composition that should have done quite well against the pick style that Splyce were trying to run, but one fight, Steelback dies, no flash was available, and suddenly the game ends in favor of Splyce.
Suddenly, the game just ended.
I said that Steelback died quickly. It did take a while, but...
It took a while, but then when he died, it was a quick day.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just got, bopped on the head by that sphere. Trashy, 3-0-10 on Lee Sin.
Yeah.
Mid to late game had the impact, no doubt. But the early game, it's one of those interesting ones where if you really want to be nitpicky, you can.
Yeah.
But crucially, had the mechanical plays, found the targets, and was one of the players for Splyce involved in catching Steelback at the end.
It was decent enough with the mid game when you look at it to say, okay, maybe we don't all in so much on Trashy because it isn't necessarily a weak pick for him. Not the best Lee Sin performance we've ever seen, but at the same time, still
for Trashy,
a solid
it just
enough
might be.
pick.
For Trashy,
Wow.
it just might be. But Yamato and Vitality, by the way, pretty strong faces. They had control of that game.
And then you look down at the scoreboard, and Kobbe, through the last 2 fights, gets to 8 kills. We talked about how he was the last remaining threat. Well, as long as he survived, as long as he got the damage down, Splyce turned these fights back in their favor. And from what looked to be a real struggle of a game that Vitality looked like they were going to shut out, Splyce turn on its head, get one good fight to end it. And Vitality, from a comp they drafted against Splyce to trying to play around how Splyce's weaknesses perform, they couldn't close the game.
Both of these teams had very minimal changes coming into the summer split. New coach for Splyce, new support for Vitality, but the game played out exactly as expected. Vitality early game, Splyce mid to late game. They're off to a good start in this series. Tell us what you think about it with the guys, Shocks.
Thank you very much. If anything, the end of that game was very, very scrappy. We're going to start by taking a look at picks and bans because we spoke a lot about Yamato having an advantage in the draft phase versus Splyce because he knows the team so well. So do you feel that this draft showed that he was looking for answers and found some answers versus the Splyce draft?
I think the draft was fairly even. I don't think Yamato Kennen got a big advantage by any means in this draft, but I don't think he lost it either, if that makes sense. Like, they gave something away, like they gave the Kennen, picked the Rumble, okay, that's a losing matchup then, at least later on in the game, but then also in the mid lane, they got the counter pick for Fizz. So they were kind of trading solo lane picks against each other, which obviously ended up kind of impacting the game a lot.
Yeah, I do have a bit of a question for you guys. The Kennen is something that we saw banned out so much for a long time. We saw it obviously yesterday coming out versus, or Fnatic got their hands on it a lot of times, but in the top lane also, why do you think it is that all of a sudden we're seeing it more? Has the priority just shifted?
It's just putting on so much pressure in towards the laning phase. It's so hard for a melee champion to do anything in the lane versus Kennen. And then he also transitions well into being a split pusher in the late game. Some people have called him a ranged Tryndamere. I kind of agree.
Oh, okay. Well, we definitely saw that. We heard Trevor there saying the early game for Vitality. However, it seemed that even though Vitality got some kills and some advantages, Splyce still kept like their hands on the reins when it came to the early game macro.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Vitality came in with a plan. They wanted to get the Fizz snowballing, and they were able to do so early. Later on, those Splyce take over with a macro game.
Yeah, that was kind of thing, like, early game, very early on, I agree that Nukeduck got a few kills and that put Vitality ahead, but I think very quickly after that, Splyce actually had really good plays, you know, swapping to top lane, so not swapping to top lane, but moving Trashy to top lane, take Rift Herald, get top lane towers into mid tower. Like, Splyce had much better early macro than we actually saw from Vitality, and we were kind of sitting and being like, Vitality, you need to start forcing a fight now.
Be proactive.
Yeah, because the Kennen is going to win the game in the side, and if you do nothing, you have Fizz ulti, you have, of course, Kalista Braum to, like, start a fight, and nothing really happened until, like, 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think the tower point comes down a lot to Vitality's draft because they have very little wave clear, they have very little siege potential, so it's really hard for them to do anything but force the team fights, and they didn't do so in their limit game.
No, and as you said, at a certain point, the game was pretty slow, and then it accelerated. Vitality probably felt the pressure, or Splyce felt the pressure, and we saw a lot of fights bursting out. We want to take a look at one where Vitality gets the upper hand and are able to get a huge advantage.
Yeah, this is what we wanted to see from them, because again, when you use Fizz, like, his ulti is so long range, it's very easy to actually try and hit just one target and use that to then engage with your entire team. And Nukeduck played a really nice game where he created a lot of picks on Fizz specifically, so it's a kill early. Splyce then tries to contest around the Baron as 4 members, which is a very questionable decision, and obviously get punished for it instantly, and this actually gives Baron over to Vitality, and they earn like, what, 7,000 gold?
6k gold swing after that.
6k gold by getting off, of course, this Baron here, and it was kind of interesting because it was Vitality not really realizing, okay, how do we start a fight? They then learned how to take the fight, and then Splyce were kind of running right into it and actually handing a lot of things over to Vitality.
Yeah, I think that was an instance where Vitality was kind of handed the fight to them. They also were able to set up some good vision control around the Baron, so forcing Splyce to face check, as you said, with 4 people, and with a Fizz when it's getting so far ahead, it's really dangerous. They have to be so careful around the Baron area, so that was a good turn of events for Vitality for sure.
Definitely was a big gold swing. They know what to do. They push a lot of towers with that Baron. They are in a good position, and you'd like to think that then they would also have the upper hand in starting the fights, and they definitely felt more confident, I feel like.
Sure.
In those fights, but somehow Splyce managed to turn them around. So what in the fights that we're going to see turns it around, or what is played incorrectly for Splyce to kind of get the advantage in the end?
I think this is an interesting fight for Vitality because they are able to almost pick up Mikyx, but this is a weird position to fight, and the equalizer goes wide from Cabochard, and as we can see on the zoomed out picture here, Steelback and Vander dives in while Cabo and Nukeduck and Djoko are in a completely different position.
Still looks
so here
good though.
They are too split up though. They aren't able to burst down Kobbe as well. There's so much lifesteal. He went for the Maw in his build this game, so he's able to put down a lot of damage before he dies, and in the end, not enough for Vitality.
But like, when it comes down to this, it seems like it could have gone the other way.
Yeah, of course, and that's where you look at the small individual mistakes, like again, that equalizer from Cabochard going completely wide, not really hitting anyone. Like, imagine if that was going down on the 3 guys that they were actually fighting against, while Steelback was busy on the other side. That would have been fantastic for Vitality.
And look at that swing.
It's a massive swing, but then at the very end, Splyce are like, nah, we're gonna get that goal lead back and actually win the game, because obviously they win the following fight and use that. But whenever games are that close, it's always like just key individual things you can look at, being like, ooh, Equalizer was wrong, ooh, Steelback maybe jumped a little bit too far and he got into tower as well, and then he split up, as you highlighted, Henning, and tiny things can just lose you the fight late game.
Yeah, for sure. And looking at this post-game graph, we also have to mention the Dragons, which were definitely in Splyce's favor. 2 Infernals with 3.5 Infernal users on the team really is what can swing those kind of close team fights when the goal is really even.
So Splyce, they got the job done in the end, but do you walk away with a kind of more positive feeling about Vitality overall compared to what you saw last week after this game 1?
More positive feeling about Nukeduck and his Fizz performance, but actually him and Djoko together were really good at setting it up. But I have more positive for Splyce, because even with them losing so many kills in the mid lane, they actually still managed to play pretty well in the mid game around the turrets. And then, yes, okay, there were some late game fights where they struggled against the Fed Fizz, but that was because your mid laner fell that far behind. So I don't want to pinpoint one individual performance on the entire team. I think the rest of Splyce actually played well despite losing mid so hard.
Agreed.
Yeah, overall, I don't think any team is too unhappy with the first game. Also, Vitality showed that they know what to do with their team comp, but just a bit too many missteps. And overall, both teams are kind of happy, but Splyce, of course, more happy since they got the win.
Well, definitely
High-level analysis right here.
Yeah, nice one, Henning. Welcome to the team. Well,
Thank you.
Vitality, they are under pressure, and they need to step up in game 2, and that is right around the corner.